Welcome back to the Recovering Out Loud podcast. I'm your host, Charles Van Loucks. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mike Wagner. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm fine, Charles. It's good to be here. I've been a little nervous. I told you that I have been vacuuming and I even started painting the basement and we don't even have a basement.
Oh, no. Oh, I love it. Well, it's great to have you on the show, and I look forward to talking with you because, I've known you for a while, and you've racked up 44 years
Almost
of sobriety. Yeah, and
August 25, it'll be 44 and I plan to make it.
wow, that's
That
fantastic.
mostly means I'm just old, of course,
Yeah.
which is
Well,
obvious.
I'm curious about, how you reached that number. A lot of people find sobriety for the rest of their life as a very daunting, jarring kind of thought. So how'd you achieve that?
Well, I'll tell you, Charles, that's a tough question. I was in a group with the lead counselor in our program. I work at Valiant Living, which was founded by Mike Deneen, who had a lot to do with the development of Cedar at the University of Colorado Hospital. But I was in a meeting and the counselor turned to me and said, "Mike, how have you been sober for so long?" And there was a long pause, and maybe through the inspiration of my higher power, I finally said, I became worthy of taking very good care of myself.
Hmm.
And that's probably the most accurate answer I have to that question. The issue is, where did the worthiness come from? That's
Hmm.
the hard
Yeah.
part.
Right. And what an interesting concept, because, if we think about our active addictions for a moment, it was very much the opposite of caring for ourselves, right? For me, for example, I would beat myself up. I was very, very hard on myself about everything. I wouldn't take physical, good care of myself. My hygiene was terrible. I didn't take care of my teeth. Yeah, there was a lot of really negative things happening to myself. So, I agree with you today. Taking care of myself is a cornerstone of my own recovery, because I feel like it lends itself to, I deserve this new life. I'm caring for myself enough that I care about my future. I care about my recovery, kind of thing. Is that kind of where you come at it from, do you think? Or
Well, yeah, honestly, that response to the question, how have you been sober for so long, took me a little by surprise. uh, as I said it, I realized how true that was. Um, I, uh, I, you know, I volunteered at Cedar for 4 years, and one of the things, part of the instruction I learned from distinguished psychiatrist there, Dr. Failing, was the program that's, let's say, imposed upon a physician if they discover that they have been abusing substances or whatever.
hmm.
And he described these elements as I think it's pretty much the universal formula for recovery work. Uh, Structure, putting a plan together for your life, which is particularly critical at the beginning. How am I going to keep myself safe, for example? Accountability, um, just how am I going to hold myself responsible? And the element that refers back to this issue of becoming worthy is a growth in self-esteem.
Hmm.
Where does that come from? When we so hate ourselves in our behavior, how do we heal that? And maybe part of the answer to that question is in the fourth element. The fourth element is a long-term therapeutic relationship. The critical relationship in my early recovery was work I did with a now quite distinguished psychologist by the name of Kurt Malkoff in Columbus, Ohio. I met with him every week for 3 years. That therapeutic relationship was the source of me beginning to be worthy of taking good care of myself.
Hmm.
So I'm not so sure that's responsive to your question, but I at least acknowledge that for me, at least, it was the worthiness, the growth in self esteem that was the hardest earned of everything.
Hmm.
And maybe still is. Maybe still is.
Absolutely. And for our viewers out there, I want you to keep in mind that, recovery, there are a lot of different ways to recover. And, you know, you might be just in the here and now in terms of chaos in your life. And I just need to get past this chaos. But just know that there's so much more to this. And we can heal and grow
Boy, that's
so
well
many.
said. That's really well said. That's right.
Yeah.
I think to protect the authenticity of that structure accountability is that those are just concepts. We are the architects of our own recovery, and we must be because nobody can give it to us. We have to earn it ourselves.
Yeah.
But it isn't that that formula has any kind of specific prescription. It's within those concepts that we design our own plan.
Yeah. And I think the open-mindedness is key as well, because like, if I were in early recovery, I might be thinking about certain things that I learned, like in a treatment center, let's say, and I might be saying, "Oh yeah, that one fits me exactly. I relate to that one." Or this one over here, maybe not so much, right? But I think the ability to stay open minded and at least try to let them in, try to apply them, and see if they help. I think that is absolute gold, and that continues forward into our long term recovery as well. I think.
Oh, I think that's very important, Charles. Yeah. And I might not, I might not appreciate that as much as I should. That we not only must, but we are entitled to our own journey. It is a very special, and it turns out this whole thing is a real gift. Sure as hell doesn't feel like that in the beginning,
Mhm.
but it turns out that the person that ends up at the end of this process, and I don't mean at the time of our death, but as we really achieve the quality of sobriety in our lives, we end up uh, at, it's a little hard to acknowledge this for myself, but I have witnessed the extraordinary people on the other side of this tunnel. And the truth is, we wouldn't get there without this. This
Yeah.
turns out to be a profound gift.
Yeah, it really
That's a little
does.
hard to accept maybe in the beginning, but it's the truth. And I really mean that. I have a lot of evidence of that.
Absolutely. And, I kind of equate it to like a reset button a little bit, because oftentimes when we're going through our life in active addiction, we're just trying to survive, right? We just
Oh,
see it as the next stage kind of thing. But once we're able to get into recovery and really kind of open up and explore those darkest corners of ourselves and do something about those things, I think that's where we can really start to get growth in specific areas that we want. Like for example, maybe we have a good career that we like, but our relationships are no good. You know, being able to slow down and readjust and try those relationships in a different way can be really helpful, because that one thing can affect so many different parts of our life that we're not even aware of. But just by addressing it and making some progress there, we can actually impact several other areas in our life. And it's kind of the same thing with recovery as a whole. It's not just about putting down the drink. Not at all. It's very much about the whole cage around us, where
Absolutely.
where the drink was kind of the only release or
Yeah.
coping mechanism that we had.
As AA says, it's the symptom.
Yeah.
There was a great scene in this TV series called The Lincoln Lawyer,
Oh,
where
yeah.
the lawyer and I think this woman who's seated next to him in a bar is his driver, but they're in a conversation. They're both sober,
Hmm.
but they both have a drink in front of them.
Hmm.
And this woman says, and I think this is a great quote. She said, you can't recover until you figure out what you're recovering from.
Hmm. Wow.
That's really true. I mean, most of us, or a lot of us at any rate, find the substance as a source of relief to trauma, to the
Hmm.
pain that we're feeling in our lives. Mostly for me, a lot of that was self doubt and regret. I was a poor student, even in grade school, and took me 8 years to get through college and four institutions. And oh my God. At any rate, I'm still embarrassed about that, but not enough that I won't talk about it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would, I might not have talked about it if I had never finished, of course. But
Yeah.
we, well, I even lost my train of thought, which is one of the characteristics of being an old man.
Well, that quote from that show was beautiful, though. You have to know what you're recovering from, and I think that that's something that it's kind of an interesting topic, right? Because somebody who is addicted to heroin, for example, right? They would say, "Well, I need to recover from heroin." Right? And on the surface level, that's true, but 9 times out of 10, there's always some other stuff underneath that led us to that. It's not like we just woke up one morning and decided we wanted to try heroin just for fun, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
pick up a drink just for fun. So I think it's important for people, especially early on, to know that there's more to this than just putting down the substance, right? It's very much a self-discovery process. It's very much the ability to remain curious as to how our lives got to that point, what
Yep.
things led us there.
Curious. Curious is an important word.
Yeah.
Curious. One of the things that prompts me to say is that one of the things I did in my early recovery is I approached my disease somewhat scientifically. I
Hmm.
read a lot of books, I attended a lot of the seminars, I got to know some people that were professionals in the recovery world, and coming to understand what this illness really is, even from a scientific perspective, helped me appreciate how serious it is, but it also gave me some relief. I could begin to acknowledge that I really didn't do this on purpose.
Hmm.
That I didn't, when I started drinking badly or dangerously when I was 17, there was no moment when I sat down and said, you know what, I want to become an alcoholic.
Hmm.
I'm going to really work at this until I'm an alcoholic. I can't wait. I never did that. As a
Right.
matter of fact, when I finally went to treatment when I was 37, 20 years later, I remember meeting with my counselor and then leaving her office and saying to myself, son of a bitch, I'm an alcoholic. Like news. This was news.
Right.
I grew up in an alcoholic family. I uh, I hopefully was supportive to my father's recovery even before my own. So uh, still that denial or whatever it is, it was still so prevalent that it was sort of a surprise to me that I thought, holy smoke, I'm actually an alcoholic. I'm actually sick. And now I have to do something about it. And how the hell am I going to do that?
Right.
Where's that resource going to come from after all these years?
Hmm. And so where did you start once you knew that that was kind of who you were? Where did you start your recovery journey?
This is a painful memory. I was working for a distinguished company that had been founded by a friend of mine. And one of the guys that worked there, my age, was a really brilliant fellow in the early world of high tech computer technology. The company I worked with, uh, they were developing one of the first automated medical billing systems.
Hmm.
And the creator of that technology was this young man, Larry. And he was he was a serious alcoholic. He had been in and out of a number of treatment programs and all this, but once I finally came to acknowledge that I really needed help, I went to him and said, what should I do? And he sent me to Riverside Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, where we lived. Uh, and I made an appointment. And, we worked with physicians all over the city. I'm sitting in the lobby of this recovery program in a hospital, and I'm thinking, what the hell would I do if one of our clients showed up? How would I explain why I'm here? And you know what? Maybe somewhat miraculously, I heard myself say to myself, I really don't care. I need this, and I'm going to do this.
Hmm.
So I ended up in a intensive outpatient program because I absolutely refused to go into residential treatment. And the woman I met with, Jean Anderson, who became a wonderful friend, she said, here's the deal. You will sign an agreement right now. This is my first visit. You will sign an agreement that if you do not do what you're told, you will immediately enter our residential program.
Hmm.
I was so terrified of the idea of going into a residential program that I signed that agreement and I meant it and I kept my promise.
Hmm.
A lot of that early motivation was simply to stay out of residential treatment. But here's the painful part of that memory. My friend Larry, whom I lost touch with, I got fired from my job about 6 months after I got sober. My friend Larry died on the street.
Hmm. Sorry.
He lost his extraordinary job, his family, and he died literally homeless on the street.
Hmm.
So this is a painful journey in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But what are the rewards?
Right.
I
Right.
mean, sobriety is a pain in the ass. It's hard. I remember somebody I was in treatment with said it's saying, have a drink, have a drink. In the beginning, that compulsion is there's so much energy there
Hmm.
that I'm really a victim, you know, and not in a feeling sorry for myself way, but I really am at the mercy of the impact it's had on my brain effectively. And so how do we, uh, how do we justify the challenge, particularly of those early months and years of sobriety? What do I get for the trouble?
Mm-hmm.
I really want to share this story because this just happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
In
Please.
our detox program, I've worked with a close friend by the name of Chandler, whom I met when I was at Cedar. And in a group some weeks before that, he said, you know, the only thing I realized I really had to give up was that moment of ah.
Interesting.
And I thought, wow, that's really an insight. Well, I shared that story in this group at Detox 2 weeks ago, and a young man in Detox said, where have you found that feeling of awe in all your years of sobriety?
Hmm.
That's a hell of a question.
Right.
And it took me a long time to respond. I mean, it felt like a long time, but a couple of minutes anyway. And I finally said, well, I've been married to the same woman for 55 years. My kids are all sober and successful. I've had a good career. I'm 81 and I'm still skiing. I'm in good health. I guess that's been the
Beautiful. Yeah, and that's the reclaiming of our lives, right? To be in a place where we can have a relationship with our kids, right? Where we
Oh boy.
can continue our marriage and, earn trust and all these different things. Those all take time. But you're right. Once you get to that point of having all of those things, that is that awe. The difference is the awe that you're describing lasts forever. The awe from the drink or whatever, it's fleeting, doesn't last.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I think the most significant thing I claim to be able to share, underlined claim, is the rewards that come. And I I don't know if this is consistent with our theme, but those challenges of regret and the Buddha taught us that the only reality is the present, and yet I find myself returning to my regrets of my past and worrying about the future all the time. Maybe that would be less true if I were a better meditator, but it's nonetheless true. But sponsor I had when I was at Cedar, Tim Rumsey, he's well known in this program. He was the source of our introduction.
Yeah. Hmm.
Very close friend, as close a friend as I have, a real brother. Anyway, he told me, this is only 5, 6 years ago. He said, every night, look in the mirror, brush your teeth, say, I love you. So, and this is really true, and this is fairly recent. Every night I brush my teeth, look in the mirror, and say, I love you, you asshole. So, you know, back to that challenge of becoming worthy of taking very good care of yourself. I think that's a gift from our higher power. I
Absolutely.
might, the evidence I have of my incompetence is substantial. I have a whole library of proof of my a-wholeness,
Me
and
too. Cheers.
quiet that and silence it and learn to take good care of yourself and be worthy of taking good care of yourself. That comes from above or across or wherever, but it's clearly not, it's something bigger than me. And I'm very grateful for that. I mean, in my life, that shows up as a Christian, as Jesus Christ. And in my son's life, it shows up in the teachings of the Buddha. I really think our higher power reveals himself in lots of ways. It's our
Absolutely.
own prejudice and fear that we insist that no, it's this church.
Right. Right.
I don't think that's true. I think God is much grander than our capacity to understand him. And I guess that maybe what I'm trying to say is pay close attention. There are miracles that are happening all the time, sometimes little, sometimes bigger, but there's evidence of a higher power. Just shut up and pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And something from my own experience too is that I have to be in a place where I can, be receptive to those things also, like I've walked past a similar scene of a bunch of a field of dead grass, right? With a single flower growing out of the middle of all the death, right? I've walked past that same scene in a very negative mindset, and I see that scene as, oh, look, it's a bunch of dead stuff. Who cares, right? And then I've walked past that scene in a very positive mindset and said, oh my God, the life, the beauty when surrounded by death, how touching, right? Like that, So it's very much about
Hmm.
where we are when we notice those things, right? Because we could take a message like that, we could take an experience, and we can very quickly write it off as something that it's not, So I think
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
important
well
to,
said, Charles. Beautiful.
yeah,
That's right.
thanks, yeah,
I I have to open my eyes and my brain. Open your arms. We go through life like this, like a boxer,
mm,
always on the defense, ready to attack or at least protect ourselves. And the truth is, we need to open our arms up, not like
yeah,
crucifixion, for heaven's sakes, but that vulnerability that enables what?
yeah,
Our our source of taking good care of ourselves.
right. And I'd say even especially these days, like I remember walking through a grocery store recently, and everyone in there didn't make eye contact. Everyone's just looking down, walking through. I mean, and like it's understandable, right? It's understandable to a degree why
Sure.
people would have that, state of mind. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the world, right? But I challenge our viewers and our listeners to, try to make eye contact, try to initiate that smile, try to initiate that sense of community again and unity. We need it, and I know everyone's going through their own stuff. And, sometimes my feeling is if I look at somebody and I engage, I'm almost like putting my stuff on them, so I just avoid them because I don't want them to do that, but it's,
Yeah.
that person probably needs the exact same thing that you do, which is just a random little act of kindness, just a smile, anything, and it's more important now, I think, than ever because a lot of good things can come out of the muck. It can come out of the darkness, right? We just have to do what we can to, bring that to light and connect with people and, you know, try to
Yeah.
get past all this, because at the end of the day, it's up to us what kind of day we have, right? It's up to us
Yeah.
if we let things affect
Yeah.
us,
And we have a lot of influence, as you're saying, on what kind of a day other people have.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. We have some responsibility, right?
Yeah, I would say so. And I wanted to talk real quick. You had mentioned in our pre-show meeting something very interesting that I'd love for you to touch on about suffering versus surrender.
Oh boy. Um, it wasn't so much versus where I heard this, where this story came from. When I was at Cedar, I don't mean to single out these two people alone because I admired a lot of the people I got to work with there. Some of the nurses were extraordinarily skilled. But two guys I particularly admired was one was was Mike Lyons. He was in charge. All the counselors in the men's cottage. Remember, I'm just a volunteer, but all the counselors in the men's cottage reported to him. He's a young man. I think he's in private practice now. But I really liked him. He's the guy that inspired me, challenged me to go back to school and get a certification, which I'm a certified addiction specialist, and which gave me which gave me a credential so I could actually work in this field. And the other guy was Dr. Failing. He's a brilliant psychiatrist, and he is still very much part of the hospital. But I really admired these two guys. So one day it occurred to me, I thought, boy, I'm going to ask them this question. What's the single most important thing that's necessary for somebody to get well? So I went to Mike first, and Mike, what do you think? What's the single most important thing? And without much hesitation, he said, it's surrender. And I thought, I got that. I have an idea what that means through AA and my own experience. So I thought, thank you, I'll keep that. Then I went to Dr. Failing. And I mean, he's literally a brilliant guy. And that word's thrown around a lot, but that's pretty exclusive quality. But at any rate, I thought to myself before I approached him, write this down, Wagner, because what he says is going to be important. So I said, Dr. Failing, what do you think? And he said, it's suffering.
Hmm.
That still makes me shake. That's the truth. So I guess one way to repeat those thoughts where you kind of have a choice, surrender or suffer.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget that was evidence of his competence. That he
Man,
could go right to the middle of your stomach with the truth.
yeah,
I miss those guys. I don't get to see them anymore.
yeah, same here. Yeah, I relate to that though so much. Suffering and surrender. Now, I've been a recovery coach for almost 6 years now, and a lot of my work in that field, I see people who have every single external force known to man pushing down on them, crushing them, and yet they go back. They relapse, they go back out, lose everything, come back, start over again. And I mean, it's all about where that moment of clarity comes from, where that aha moment is, where we say, "Oh, wow, I really don't want this for my life. There is a different option. I don't have to go through all this." And it's such an important thing. I remember in my earlier days, I would go to a lot of meetings of all kinds of different fellowships, and
Yeah.
I started to craft this little map for myself, and I'd plot points on it, in my mind of like, oh, okay, these are where certain people have relapsed based on their experiences, and then I thought that by gaining that knowledge, I could say, oh, okay, if I go to this party, I should probably be able to leave when I want, or it could be dangerous. That could be a relapse kind of thing. But the thing is, I was able to gain that knowledge without going through the pain of that relapse. So I
Yeah.
think it comes back to the whole, open-mindedness, curiosity, all of that stuff, wanting to learn from what's happened, what we've been through, and what other people have been through too, because I mean, it's just wild how some people can, one very small thing can take a hard left in their life, and all of a sudden they're straight. They never pick up anything ever again, right? Other people, unfortunately, will never get it. They don't want it. There's a little
Uh,
piece of themselves that really doesn't want it, and it's important to know that, I think, for our audience, because I mean, something that simple as just holding on to a little piece of our old life in the back of our minds and saying, one day I'm going to return to that little piece. It doesn't work that way. You either have the entire old life or none of it, because you can't have an honest, open life in recovery while still gambling illegally in the back room of whatever. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So
that's right. It's an in it's an invitation. Maybe I can't complete the sentence, but it's an invitation. I
Yeah.
remember when I was fired from my friend's distinguished company, and I've been sober for a while. I got sober in August. I think they let me go just before the end of the year, late November. And I was driving home and I thought, this is a good occasion to stop for a drink.
Right.
And
Mm.
I thought,
Mm.
you do that, Wagner, you'll never get another good job.
Mm.
And that was enough to at least get me through that part.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then later that night, when my young son, John, whom we were just with last weekend, he lives in Southeast Asia now. When he started to cry when I said goodnight to him and said, Dad, what will we do now?
Mm.
So you are recovering for yourself and everyone you love.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because it affects people around us too, 100%. You know,
No,
and they also gain strength and they gain wisdom from seeing us succeed in recovery and gain years and gain knowledge that we share with them and everything, you know. And it's beautiful. I'm glad that you've been able to impart that wisdom on them and other people around you. It's been
well, had a proud moment over the weekend. We were seated with a bunch of family. We went back to visit family because there's illness in our family, and my son started to talk about what I do at Valiant. He said, he works in the detox area as well as the residential program, but that's where the people come in when they're really in a mess. And I thought maybe he's a little proud of his old man.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He didn't say he was, but
Oh, it sounds like he is, you know, because I mean, that's a tough job. It's a tough job being essentially on the front lines of that, seeing that day in and day out. That's tough, man. Absolutely. And I think having, like, for me, for example, I remember when I went into detox and treatment and all that stuff, I had a particular nurse who made me feel so comfortable.
oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
she had shared some stories about her own
Oh,
addiction,
oh.
and you know,
That
and
was
for the
true of the nurses at Cedar and the
exactly, yeah,
nurses we have at Detox.
yeah,
Sometimes they know the client better than everybody else,
one
at
hundred
least in the
percent,
beginning.
yeah. And you know, that's the thing because like when I first went into detox and treatment, I was terrified. I didn't know what to expect. I thought I was going to be like strapped
Yeah.
to a bed, like no doors, no. I didn't know what to expect. Right. By the way, that's not real. There's no lockdown facilities. That's not a real thing. Uh, anyway, so when I was talking with this nurse, though, you know, as soon as she started to share about her own experiences, I saw the playing field level, and it wasn't I was down here and they were up here. It was now, oh, we're the same.
Oh, well,
We've
very well said. Wow. Peers.
peers.
We are
Absolutely.
peers.
100%.
Yeah, you're good at this, Charles.
Well, thank you. Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's fun. I enjoy it. You know, I like picking the brains of people who are interesting and intelligent and all that, you know,
You're
because
what's left of my brain.
yeah. And I feel the same way, man. I still 9 years clean and I still can't remember the simplest of things. I'm hoping that changes one day, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
well, I don't know. Hurry up and do it now while you're young.
Yeah, seriously. Ugh, man. Well, yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and
I
I hope
was quite nervous about it.
I
So
know you. Yeah, I know you
thank you
were.
for putting me
Yeah,
at ease.
good,
Really,
good.
thank you.
Yeah, cause
Now I'm going back to continue painting the basement, which we don't even have.
for sure, enjoy. Make it creative with lots of colors,
Exactly.
and I love that. Well, do you have any parting words for our?
I do. I only don't give up.
Yeah,
That's the trick. Just don't give up. And I don't
absolutely.
care how miserable you feel at the moment. Don't give up.
Yeah, yeah, because we can both say with 100% confidence that this does get better. It
Oh yeah,
takes time. It is the hardest yet most worthwhile thing that I've ever done in my life.
me too.
And it gets to a point once you get through all of the wreckage of our past, all the old baggage, all the dark, nasty corners that are inside ourselves. Once you get past all that and you can refill, you can gain things, you can learn new things, explore new parts of life. I mean, that's when you start to really get these rewards back, like we've been talking about, you know?
Yeah.
So just remember, it will happen. You know, it might take a long time, it might be difficult, but you can get freedom, you can get peace. So stick with it.
I'm I mean, at my age, to have a part time job in an extraordinary recovery program founded by a young, nationally recognized figure in this field, Mike Deneen, we
Yeah.
get clients from all over the country because of his reputation.
Oh, love Mike. He's
Be able to
fantastic.
work in this arena or volunteer in this arena is a extraordinary gift.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking for something to do on the side or for real or whatever, look at opportunities in this world. There are some extraordinary people.
Yeah. And you know, that's an important point that you bring up too, is giving back. You know, that ability to get outside ourselves in recovery, get outside of
Yeah,
our own heads for a while and
exactly.
help another person.
Yep.
So important. You know, I get a similar good feeling from the coaching work that I do, you know, and I
Of
think that's
course.
why I've stuck with it for so long, you
Yeah.
know.
You're obviously quite good at it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you. And
Thank you for inviting me to do this.
yeah, anytime. I'd love to have it back anytime you want.
We'll see.
For sure.
As soon as I finish the basement.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, and
See you soon.
yeah.
Let's
See you
have a
soon.
coffee. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love
Yeah.
to. Let's do it.
Me too. Yeah. Great. Love you, man.
All right. Love you too, brother. Thanks.
Bye.